Sonic X Shadow Generations is proof that remasters matter. On this channel, I like to play the originals before the remake/remasters come out. And I loaded up Sonic Generations on my PC and I thought it looked and felt amazing. And it genuinely had me asking the question of why we are even getting a remaster of this game in the first place. I get that it brings Sonic Generations to modern consoles, but the PC version still runs and looks amazing and is quite accessible for a lot of people. But as I went along with Generations and as I played the Shadow Generations campaign, I realised why this is really important. So let's talk about remakes and remasters. Obviously, with remakes, you have stuff like Silent Hill 2 Remake that bring a previously extremely inaccessible game to modern audiences. Not only did it have fixed camera angles and tank controls, things like that a lot of new gamers won't really understand, but also Silent Hill 2 was really expensive, so it gives normal people who have normal setups that don't have CRTs and PS2s and all this a way to play a game in a new way, and also when it's done right, which I think Silent Hill 2 Remake was done right, it gives old fans a new way to play one of their favourite games. Then you have straight up remasters that is, essentially the same game. They might have improved textures or improved resolution, and that's kind of what Sonic Generations is here. It looks slightly better than what I played on my PC, bear in mind that my PC was playing at 1440p, 144Hz. Obviously, it's on modern hardware like Switch, PS5 and Xbox if you don't have a PC or a Steam Deck. And sometimes they add in a couple of extra things like the extra 3 shells that you can find in the level. And that just adds something small that players that have played this game so much, they have something else to look forward to. But then you have the other type of remasters, which is what the Shadow section of this game is that they give you the base game, they up-res it, they do all this stuff. But then they also add in new content like Mario 3D Land with Bowser's Fury, and now you have Sonic X Shadow Generations. And the Shadow campaign in Shadow Generations is some of, if not the best, 3D Sonic platforming I've ever played. It feels way more deliberate than the other 3D Sonic games. It gives you more chance to react to things because it's not as fast, it's still fast, but it's nowhere near as fast as even the base Generations game. And if I'm being honest, if this didn't have Shadow Generations, yes, it would still be a great game because I do actually enjoy Sonic Generations. But all that would mean is that, okay, you can play this on modern platforms and that's it. But now because the Shadow campaign is here, it makes the game so much better, just like Bowser's Fury did with 3D World. Now, I do want to talk a bit about Sonic Generations and if it holds up nowadays, because this game, surprisingly, is 13 years old. And I think it's pretty noticeable. And I'm not talking about from a graphic standpoint because this game looks fantastic. It even looks fantastic in the PS3 version, but now it looks even better. But, and this is the biggest compliment I can give the Sonic team, is that you can actually see that their games have improved since 2011, which is something that, you can't really say about a lot of Sonic games, because for every single Sonic game, bar the original 2D ones, they are very high quality, but they're just not my cup of tea. But when it comes to 3D Sonic, every single one of them trips over itself. It falls over the same problems that the previous games had. Sometimes it adds in new issues that the other games didn't have. And the legacy of 3D Sonic is quite muddy because I love 3D Sonic. I grew up playing Sonic Heroes. And Sonic Heroes, nowadays, playing it on the PS2 is pretty rough. But when I play the GameCube version, I might enjoy it a bit more. But it's safe to say that as 3D Sonic went on, I think it always had problems. It never really cemented what it wanted to be and kept changing the formula so that, it never really built on whatever. Like the 3 playable characters of Sonic Heroes is actually a really cool idea, but it's just quite clunky in how it's implemented. And maybe if they had Sonic Heroes 2, it might be a bit better. And I think even we go forward to Sonic Frontiers, which is, I think, a great 3D Sonic game. Will they make Sonic Frontiers 2? I don't know, because if they move forward with Sonic Frontiers 2, I think they can make an absolutely fantastic game. But Sonic Generations was widely considered like the best implementation of 3D Sonic, and I think the main reason for that is because they kind of pulled the scope in a bit, because when I played Sonic Adventure 2 there not too long ago, I enjoyed the Sonic levels, but every single other level I was like, what's going on? Like, Knuckles controls really well, but his levels are awful. And then the Tails levels are just like more frustrating than anything else. And it's like, I wonder what Sonic Adventure could have been if they just focused on playing as Sonic and Shadow. And that's kind of what they did here with Sonic Generations, because the base game obviously had 2D sections, which I think are just okay. I'm not super well versed in the whole physics of Sonic and what feels good and what feels bad, but when it comes to 2D Sonic, I've always struggled to properly get into it. And every single time I went to play a 2D level in Generations, I was like, oh, I think I prefer to just play a 3D section here, because the 3D levels are just more fun. Yes, they're a bit more on rails, but I just generally prefer 3D Sonic. And since this is a channel all about nostalgia, I think the best thing about Generations is the fact that it is built on the nostalgia of Sonic. Every single level is a callback to a previous Sonic game. It's kind of a full circle moment because I had an old Let's Play channel I had when I was like 15, 16, and I did a Let's Play of Sonic Generations, and I went back to watch my reaction of the Sonic Heroes level, and I was just filled with nostalgia. And even today I am. When you load in, you see the orcas, you hear the fantastic music, you see the red and white blocks. I'm like, oh yeah, this is nostalgia. And it really has me hoping for a Sonic Heroes remake, which, you know, there has been rumors, so fingers crossed it does happen. But Sonic Generations is just Sonic nostalgia personified, and I can't think of a better Sonic game to cover on a channel that's all about nostalgia than Sonic Generations. And the base game does hold up pretty well. What I would say, the boss fights, very janky. I think in general, it just has that kind of Sonic jank. It's definitely the least janky of the 3D Sonic games, but there's still a couple of times where your momentum will take you flying off a platform for no reason whatsoever. Or you'll lock onto an enemy or something and you'll go through them instead of actually killing them. Or, you know, there's them little Sonic janky things, and that's probably the reason why I won't. I was contemplating going for the platinum in this game, but I'm just sitting there like, you know, I think it will just be more frustrating than anything else, especially the trophy to beat the final boss without getting hit. That would be a disaster. But moving on to the real reason why we all bought this game, why we all want to play it. The Shadow portion of this game is some of the best 3D Sonic platforming I've ever played, and you can really see the leap of the last 13 years, the stuff that they learned to make a really tight, well-controlling character. They gave you levels that you don't have to react to things as quickly. You're actually given a couple of seconds to react to like new platforms, or maybe you can jump off a grind rail to get into a red ring, and you just have more time to react. Because in the base game of Generations, you're in the San Francisco level from Sonic Adventure 2. There's a couple of parts where you're like, how am I supposed to react to this without having previous knowledge of the level? And I get some people will say, oh, well, that's the whole thing with Sonic. You kind of have to replay the levels. And, you know, I get that, but I've always felt like in Sonic that your knowledge of the level trumps your actual mechanical skill. Whereas in other platformers, they give you enough time, and if you are skilled enough, you can react to things, or you can get to that high platform by doing this, that, or the other. Whereas a fair bit of Sonic is just playing through the levels and realizing, like, okay, at this point, I just have to jump. And there's no way of me knowing that until I already played the level. And that's just a gripe I have with Sonic in general. But in Shadow Generations, you're actually given time. Like, there was a couple of times where I was on a grind rail, and I could very clearly see the path coming up. I could see the main path, I could see two offshoots, and it was just easier for me to then map it out in my head and react accordingly. One thing that they did is that they gave Shadow a double jump. In Generation, Sonic's second press of X is basically just like a little dash that he does forward, and I just think it's an awful move because it's really hard to get the sort of distance control on it right. But here, since you have the double jump, you do have that extra bit of control where you can jump. And if you think, oh crap, I overshot this platform, you just jump again and you'll be able to get it. And it's just that little change that makes this feel so much better to play. Then you get into the overworld, which is a fully 3D overworld. Think something kind of Bowser's Fury-ish, or kind of Sonic Frontiers, but squashed down. That's what it feels like. To get to like the different levels, you have to, you know, climb up a building and do little platforming challenges. To find the collectibles, you have to do more platforming challenges or do ring collection challenges or all this sort of stuff. And it just kind of gives you this fun little playground to run around in, which is something that up until Frontiers I thought Sonic was always missing, because I always saw those demos of, I think it's called Sonic Utopia or whatever it was, and it was a fully 3D open world Sonic demo where you could just run around in a world and you could just get used to his mechanics and his momentum. Whereas, since all the other levels in Sonic are obviously very on rails, are very, not exactly linear, but they're compact, and you're not really given this open playground to play around, I always found it that I struggled to get used to Sonic's sort of moveset. Whereas with Frontiers and now with Shadow Generations, with the open world, I'm given that playground to run around in, and I can mess around to figure out, oh, I could do this, I could do that, and you're not really locked into, you know, having to restart a level and only do this part of it to figure out the momentum, or I have to get halfway through the level to maybe work on this mechanic that I want to work on. Now I'm just given that playground and I just love it. I mean, I will always love Shadow. Shadow has forever been my favourite Sonic character ever since I played Shadow the Hedgehog on the PS2, because that game was just so edgy. It's perfect for a kid. I mean, you have a gun. I think that's probably the only criticism I would level at Shadow Generations here, is that he doesn't have a gun. Well, he technically does have a gun, but I was streaming this and I just had a big massive smile on my face because I was genuinely surprised at how good Shadow Generations is. And the best thing about it is that it's the exact same length as the base game. I was expecting to get this done within like an hour and a half or 2.5 hours, but like 5.5 hours, and if I really want to do more stuff, there's still loads more for me to do there. I just had a great time with it, and I touched on why I think this remaster matters, but I think the main reason why it matters, and it's the same with other remakes and other remasters, like if you take Battle for Bikini Bottom, Purple Lamp built Battle for Bikini Bottom from the ground up, and then they got used to all of these tools, and then they implemented them into Cosmic Shake and made their own game. I'm hoping Purple Lamp do the same thing with Epic Mickey as well, with Epic Mickey Rebrush, and then either remake 2 or then make their own game. And here, with Shadow Generations or with Bowser's Fury or whatever, it's either the team had ideas that they couldn't implement into another game, so we just get this fun little side campaign, and if that's all it is, then still that's great. But also, you could see this as being a test bed for maybe Shadow gets his own game. Now, I don't think so. Maybe there's a remake of Shadow the Hedgehog. I don't think so, but I would like to see it. Or maybe they're working on Sonic Frontiers 2 that has multiple playable characters, and they're working on building out Shadow's kit. And while they were doing that, they built this really, really fun game that we all get to experience. And maybe in Frontiers 2, we get to see it even more fleshed out. Maybe you'll get to play as Knuckles, and he'll control amazingly, but they'll actually give him good level. Sonic Generations is still really fun. Again, I think it has issues like most 3D Sonic games, and I do think Shadow Generations has issues too. But you can see how much better Shadow controls, how much better the levels are laid out. The levels are also longer, which I think is really good. Again, it gives you a bit more of a playground to play around in, and sometimes with the boost Sonic games, it feels like the levels are over before they even begin. But here, like, a normal run through of a level is like 4 to 6 minutes. So you're actually given a full level to run around in. And yeah, they just did an amazing job. I had an absolutely fantastic time playing this game. And that's why remasters, as well as remakes, do matter. If you want to hear me talk about other remasters and other remakes, I have Silent Hill 2 remake somewhere around here. I also have Epic Mickey Rebrush somewhere around here, which probably be more up your alley if you're into 3D platforms. I cover a lot of nostalgic and retro stuff here. There's going to be more actual, genuine retro stuff coming on this channel in the next couple of months. So I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.